Hello. So it's been a little while just because I got super busy at work. So today, so I apologize for the state of me. I'm in desperate need of a haircut, but I now have one booked and it's the end of a very long work week. I'm kind of in between balancing a full-time job and some side work. So it's been a little bit hectic. I look a little bit like a dirty mop, but we have a couple of great updates. 1989, Taylor's version was released today. In celebration, almost timed, in a divine manner, my Era sweatshirt came in. And we're all excited about it. Another update. I've recently started using my Switch more again, which is great. Who saw that coming? Not me. But I have a few books that I've read lately in between my little time off that I wanted to catch up on talking about that I really think kind of fit the fall Halloween kind of aesthetic. I have a couple of adult fantasy, a couple of YA fantasy, and a nonfiction that will be a surprise to nobody. So first I wanted to talk about The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is a continuation of her Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. It's taking place after the events of book 3 with a small time jump, nothing too severe. We have a couple of new characters and we're following some old beloved characters. I can't even tell you, falling back into this world after such a long time, I zoomed through this book. And this book is deceptively long. It looks like it's about 300 pages, but it actually is 650-ish. It has Bible thin pages, but it is compulsively readable. And if you liked the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy, I would definitely recommend this. As a start to a new series, I do think it stands alone as well. So I don't feel you necessarily have to read the first trilogy if you just wanted to hop in here. I think V.E. Schwab does a really good job of keeping you up to date and kind of filling you in on everything, but definitely to get the full scope of the world and all of the nuances of the characters and the different relationships between characters, I definitely would recommend rereading that trilogy or at least looking up a video that summarizes it. Next is one I'm actually in the middle of, but I thought I'm enjoying it enough that it warranted talking about, as I am about a little over halfway through, and that's The Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. This is one I haven't really heard a lot about, which is why I kind of wanted to put it out there as something to pick up this season. I would say if you liked Naomi Novak's Spinning Silver, if you enjoyed the Catherine Arden Bear and the Nightingale trilogy, this is something that is very, very similar. It's heavy into this sort of almost fairy tale-esque kind of storytelling. It is a Spanish Inquisition inspired fantasy, which I just thought it scooped me up right away. I kind of knew I would love it so much that I was first in line for the library, but honestly, I just knew I would love it so much, so I wound up picking it up when I saw it in the bookstore, and I am so glad that I did because I'm absolutely loving it. I haven't been able to read as much as I'd like lately just because I had a recent family trip, and with the 2 jobs that I'm kind of working with, it's just been a little difficult, but it really is saying something that I was able to take one day off this week and get through 280 pages already. The next 2 are a little bit strange. I have touched on one already, but this time of year it warrants talking about again. And I'm just usually not into YA. However, both of these authors, I loved their adult series, so I picked up the YA in anticipating that hopefully, even though the characters might be young, that there would be some really good storytelling there, and I was not disappointed. So the first one I'll touch on again because I've already mentioned it before is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is one that I've really enjoyed. I had a hard time even getting my hands on, but it felt like once I did, I was so happy that I spent so much time hunting it down. It was so satisfying to start, and it did not disappoint. I had a really great time with this one, and Rebecca Ross, and coming off the back of my Rebecca Ross A Fire Endless reread that nearly brought me to tears, I was really happy that I could pick up something right away from her, and it really did not disappoint. Where it's generally not the genre for me, I found this story both endearing because of the age of the characters, and the stylization of writing was very true to Rebecca Ross, which I find her male heroes always generally quite endearing. But also the story itself was so wholesome and sweet, and I believe this is going to be at least a duology, and I will be picking it up whenever the next one comes out. I really, really enjoyed this. Next, I wanted to talk about A Study in Drowning, which I just read recently. So this is by Ava Reed, who also wrote The Wolf and the Woodsman, that I really enjoyed. And this was similarly just a very atmospheric read that I would recommend. I would say this does read younger than Divine Rival, so I would recommend it to those that really, really like YA and already enjoy that style of writing. I do think where Rebecca Ross, her writing transitioned very well from her adult fantasy into just a little step down in maturity level for Divine Rivals. I found Ava Reed's style didn't translate as well, in my personal opinion. I thought the atmosphere was great. I really appreciated everything about the story. It was so atmospheric. I really, really enjoyed it. It would be about a 3.5 out of 5. If you do enjoy YA, then I think this would be a perfect fall read. Okay, so I stand corrected. I forgot completely about God Killer, which I've been pushing all of my friends to read, and I completely forgot to bring it up in this video because it was on my boyfriend's shelf because I'm forcing him to read it too. But God Killer by Hannah Kaner is maybe my favorite read this entire year. It was a 5 out of 5 star, and I absolutely am so enthralled by this story. I'm telling everyone who likes John Gwynne that this is the story for you. It reads so quickly. It's less than 300 pages. It is compulsively readable. The characters are so endearing. It has a animal companion. It's multi-POV, and it is so atmospheric and amazing. And this is also one that I think if you liked Catherine Arden, I would maybe give this one a try as well. Not so much Naomi Novak, but that really atmospheric world where you feel that you're almost a part of it. You can really visualize it. Hannah Kaner does a really, really great job in doing that and storytelling for this. And this might be one of my new favorite series of all time. Okay, and last but not least, I have a nonfiction to talk about, which is Britney Spears' The Woman in Me. I feel I would be doing myself an injustice to not put this in this video, specifically because I read this book in the span of like 3 hours, so it's so quick, but also I was a die-hard, before I became a Swiftie, before Swiftie was around, and I have been a Swiftie since album 1. I mean, a 17-year-long love affair with Taylor Swift. I was a Britney Spears girl. And I didn't really follow too closely everything that was going on with her conservatorship and like the documentaries that came out. I just somehow, I don't know if it's when I was moving across the country. I don't know how it happened, but I basically missed that entire phenomenon that happened. So going into this was astounding. I mean, I knew enough about it that I knew it happened, but I didn't know the ins and outs of it. And I do know this is ghost written. To what extent, I'm not sure. I do feel it reads similar to some of her Instagram posts, so I do think that there is at least the attempt to stylize it. stylize it after how she communicates to her audience, or she is a little bit more influential in this storytelling than what one would normally assume for a celebrity memoir. And by that, there's good and bad. So some of the thoughts were quite disjointed. Some of the sentences were very clunky and not unreadable, but definitely you have to read it over again to try to understand the sentiment that Spears is trying to get across. But that being said, readability aside, it was a fascinating read. It was a very interesting story. You can read it, make yourself a cup of tea, settle in for an afternoon of like a rainy day, and you can just eat this whole book up in one sitting, really. Let's see, it is less than 300 pages. It looks like it's about 275. And really, for everything that has been happening around that Spears kind of life, it's interesting, no matter to what extent, to get her perspective on what all went down, how it was absorbed. Similar to my recent read of Trainwreck, it was really interesting to go back in time, because I was so young at the time, to see really how mental health was treated, how celebrity was treated, and just women in media, period. I thought there was a lot to learn and a lot to take away from all that. And it was a little bit heartbreaking to read, like, you know, she's never this hyper when I don't have the camera on. It was a little bit heartbreaking to see to what extent women used to be demonized, and to what vitriol people used to tear women down. There seemed to be this fascination in watching a woman rise in celebrity, almost with this weird anticipation of when she would fall. And I don't feel there is many better examples than this global phenomenon that was Britney Spears, and how beloved she was, and how they propped her up to be this like perfect figure even when she was pushing back about it. And this sort of like coyote-like attack as she was falling from grace, from public eye. It was just very, very interesting. And there is a really nice part about Paris Hilton and how she carried herself, and the friendship that her and Britney Spears have, which I also thought was really an interesting thing to add, and a really cool thing to add, to see these two women that were so torn down by the public, to see them come together and have a very steadfast friendship through everything. I thought that was really, really nice to read about as well. But that's all I really have for today's video. I am going to turn this off and probably promptly start reading again. So I'm going to get to that, continue listening to 1989 basically all weekend until it's football time. So that is it for me today. Again, I'm sorry I look like such a scraggly old hound dog, but I promise to be back with a haircut, makeup, and probably the same sweater if I'm honest. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.